Heartburn relief is on the way. We are going to be putting out those flames today on the exam room. Oh, my friends, welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hello, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And let's face it, heartburn is no fun. It is uncomfortable. It can keep you up at night. It can feel like your chest is on fire. So what causes it? Is it spicy food or something else that you had to eat? Maybe something even to drink? And what about when those flames just won't go away? Could that be a piece to a bigger health puzzle? What you need to know and when to see the doctor, that is what we are talking about here today with the man with tips for nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, and diarrhea. His friends call him Pepto. Though he's no klepto, he still may steal your heart. For he is king of the fart. The gut health Mac Daddy making a plant-based hamburger patty here to fiber fuel your mind, body, and soul. Listen to him. You'll need the whole toilet paper roll. For he is Cupid to your colon. Now, let's get this party rolling. So Cupid, draw back your bow and let our bowels blow. With that, we welcome the one, the only, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz.
Oh my goodness. Chuck,
Thank you.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I was just sitting at the table last night and it popped in there. I was like, I need something Valentine's themed.
You're a genius.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a
Thank
genius.
you.
I've always been of the belief that there's different forms of intelligence. Some people are like really good with reading and writing. Some people are really good with math, whatever. Street smarts. We have found your genius. This is where you're. You should have been a rapper.
I should have. Hey, look, I'll put this up on Cameo, right? And I can do a custom intro for anybody. All right, let's get a little side hustle going. How about that?
It was like it rhymed and it told a story and it was funny. It checked all the boxes of perfection. That was amazing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You are amazing because you come to us with a whole host of knowledge when it comes to all things GI, including heartburn, which, as this is Heart Health Month, let's just focus on another kind of heart, the heartburn, and it is just horrible. You ever had really wicked heartburn, even as a gastroenterologist? I'm sure you have.
Everyone has.
Yeah, it's no
horrible.
fun.
It's miserable.
What are some of the common causes, the most common that you saw when you were in practice?
Well, I mean, look, there's the things that trigger the symptoms, right? So this is like you hear about this all the time: spicy foods, acidic foods, so orange juice or apple cider vinegar, actually chocolate and peppermint. We can talk more about why that would be, but chocolate and peppermint both actually make it worse. Caffeine makes it worse. Alcohol makes it worse. So these are like some of the things. Like basically, if it's fun, it will make your heartburn worse. But the question is, why is this happening? And the solution is not just the avoidance of the foods that trigger symptoms. It can help. But actually, the solution is instead to get to the root of the problem. And this is really at its root, this is a motility issue. So heartburn, acid reflux, these are the result of the way that our intestines, our esophagus, our stomach are moving. And there's an opportunity to correct that.
And is there a difference between, just what people would call regular heartburn, and then you just mentioned acid reflux, and then there's GERD? Is there a difference between the three?
Yeah, there is, and it's a bit of semantics, to be honest with you. And I'm sure that I am guilty, and I will be today, of kind of intermingling these terms when probably I should not. So, and this is just one of those things. Heartburn is the symptom, right? And that's a specific symptom that is the result of inappropriate reflux of stomach contents up into the esophagus. So the key here is what's happening is things that are in the stomach that should be propelled forward and should be moving down through your intestines are instead splashing in a retrograde direction up into your chest, into your esophagus, and causing symptoms as a result of this. Heartburn is the classic symptom. It feels like your chest is burning. By the way, women can experience atypical cardiac symptoms. So if you have these symptoms, just be aware, particularly among women, that you need to make sure that your heart is okay. Don't just assume it's a reflux thing. But heartburn is sort of the classic symptom. But other things that you could have, and I think many people can relate to this, you can get that acid taste in the back of your throat. You may have difficulty swallowing. You get hoarseness or a cough. You get regurgitation where you literally feel things coming up. And so these are all manifestations of what we call gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD.
So when is it, a real problem in your eyes? Like if somebody has heartburn for 2 days, 3 days, that's when they should go see the doctor, or, when is it time to worry?
Yeah. Well, so in some ways, like beauty, it's a little weird to use the expression beauty when we're talking about a disease, but the beauty here is that ultimately pathologic reflux will result in symptoms. Right. And I just listed the symptoms that are commonly associated with this. And so the state of your reflux based upon the degree of symptoms, the chronicity of symptoms, the intensity of the symptoms. So these are the things that I look at, right? And it's conceptually quite similar to other digestive health problems, which is that you have a one-off. You went out, it was the Super Bowl, you ate chicken wings, you were drinking beer, and then you went to bed and you woke up with reflux that night. Are we shocked? Absolutely not. Does this mean that you have a disease? No, this is not a chronic problem. But on the flip side, the person who, it's pretty consistent every week, once or twice at least, you're going to be manifesting these symptoms. This is an ongoing thing and it's affecting your quality of life and you don't feel well when it happens. Then I think it's time to talk to your doctor. You don't necessarily need to go straight to the gastroenterologist for that. But I think it's a reasonable thing to talk to your doctor. And the other thing I'll say real quick, Chuck, is that we're going to be discussing things that you may not actually hear from your doctor. I wish that you would. And so I think it's important to see that there are root cause solutions that also exist in addition to medical therapy.
So let's talk about some of the more acute cases. I mean, you just listed chicken wings and beer at the top. You were talking about chocolate. What about spicy food? We hear about that a lot. Can spicy food really fire up the heartburn for a lot of people, or is that kind of a myth?
Yeah, so spicy and acidic. Let's lump them both in together. These are going to trigger your symptoms, but it's not necessarily the root cause of acid reflux. Okay, so what's happening here is that when you have chronic reflux, your esophagus, which is the tube that connects your throat down to your stomach, and it really basically serves one purpose, which is to mobilize food through your chest so they can get access to your abdomen and get digested. Right, so you're literally just moving when you trigger a swallow. You're moving it from here down to your stomach. All right. Well, when you have this chronic problem, you are splashing stomach contents, which include acids, but it also includes enzymes and things that can cause bile acids, things like this, up into your esophagus in an inappropriate way. And it will cause harm and damage to the tissues that line the esophagus. And this is conceptually similar to the gut barrier. And when it breaks down, that barrier, you no longer have the protection that you used to. And it's very easy for acid, whether it comes from your stomach or whether it's found in your food, for that acid to then get to where the nerves are and you will feel it. So the acid could come from your stomach, that's reflux. But because you have chronic reflux, because you have damaged the lining of your esophagus, you could also take acid that's in orange juice or vinegar or spicy food, buffalo wings, right? But it's just acid. Spicy is acid. And that acid is going to trigger your symptoms in the same way that your stomach could.
All right. Now, you mentioned that term root cause, and I love getting to the root cause of things as opposed to just putting a Band-Aid over top of the symptom. When it comes to root cause, is it truly the standard American diet? Is it the sedentary lifestyle? Is it everything kind of lumped together? Or is there one other thing maybe that's more common than we realize?
Well, I think that it's a product of all of these factors, right? So to isolate it and say, hey, here's the one thing, it's a little bit silly. And if it were just the one thing, then every single person in America would take their reflux, do the one thing, and it would be over. And that's just not the case. And this is why we live in a society where like 1 in 4 people are dealing with a chronic issue, and the most prescribed medicines that exist are the medications that are being used to treat this type of problem. So, what is the root cause? Well, to me, as a gastroenterologist, the way that I would characterize this, Chuck, is this is a motility issue. So, our entire intestines are constantly moving. So, it's 20 to 25 feet of intestines that start in our throat. That's where the esophagus begins, and it ends at the bottom where our rectum is. And throughout the course of a day, like as I sit here right now and I talk to you, my intestines are moving. Your intestines are moving. All these listeners, all these viewers, your intestines are moving. And capturing that, understanding that, it's just not that easy because of that constant movement among 20 to 25 feet. But your body knows when it's not in rhythm. We may not have a test to prove this, but you know, your body knows when it's not in rhythm. And when these parts of what we call the foregut, which is the beginning of the intestines, the esophagus, the stomach, the first part of the small intestine, when they're not in rhythm, when they're not moving the way that they're supposed to, then you get junky motility, which results in things going all over the place and in directions that they're not supposed to. Instead of propelling things forward in an organized way, we create an environment where it's actually quite easy for things to go the wrong way, retrograde. And this is how we end up with acid reflux. So to me, the issue is a part of the esophagus, the stomach, the area where the esophagus and the stomach are connected to one another. And this is a motility problem. And this is why, Chuck, it's quite interesting to ponder that there's evidence to indicate that there's an esophageal microbiome, right? So we have microbes in our esophagus. And if you sample those microbes, you will discover that people who suffer with these reflux related issues, they have dysbiosis in their esophagus. And we have evidence to indicate that fiber is good for people with reflux. So by the way, if you're listening to this right now and this is an issue for you, or this is an issue for your friend, share this episode with them. I've just given you the first tip, which is that you need to increase your fiber intake. And it's no coincidence that 95% of America is deficient in fiber. And here we are suffering with this epidemic of reflux related issues. So fiber helps to support the gut microbiome. Fiber helps to support healthy, in rhythm gut motility.
So that's interesting to me. I think that somebody could say, well, wait a minute, if I eat a high fiber diet, isn't that going to cause my stomach to work a little bit harder and maybe produce more acid because it has to work that much harder to break down the fiber? It's just a more dense type of food compared to that ultra processed stuff, which just readily goes through the system. So, break that one down for us, Mac Daddy of microbiome.
Yeah, well, you're bringing in an important topic here, which is that the problem isn't actually acid.
Mm.
Now, this may sound counterintuitive because all of the medications that work block acid. That's how they work. But blocking acid doesn't actually fix the inherent problem. It just helps you to reduce the symptoms that result from the inherent problem that you have. Because again, when you are refluxing, the acid from your stomach or from your diet is going to go and come into the contact with this part of your body that is exposed, it's vulnerable, and you're going to feel it. Okay. But the problem is like acid is not related to your gut motility. Taking a proton pump inhibitor like Nexium or Prilosec, these are the dominant drugs, protonics, it doesn't fix gut motility. You still have reflux. You just have reduced the acid content so you don't feel it as much. All right. And there are consequences to this, Chuck. This is why it's an important conversation. Proton pump inhibitors, for many years, they really started to come up about 25 years ago. And for many years, as a gastroenterologist, the prevailing idea in my profession was that there's just no downside. No one has side effects. They're highly effective. Why would you screw with this? Why don't you just put every single person on this drug and never take them off? Why? What's the issue there? Okay, well, what's interesting is I actually just gave a talk last week with the NFL alumni. So I was in New Orleans, home of the Super Bowl, and I was talking to retired NFL players and I put up a slide and I said, here are a list of the reasons why people are suffering with a damaged gut microbiome in 2025. Guess what was on that list? Proton pump inhibitors, this class of drugs. We were designed to have stomach acid. Stomach acid is actually a part of building a healthy gut microbiome. And when you eliminate the stomach acid, you actually cause harm to the downstream microbiome and you put yourself in a position where you can create dysbiosis. So the problem is never stomach acid. It was never stomach acid. The problem here is that the gut motility has not been addressed and we need to get it back in rhythm.
All right. Well, detour here. Way to bury the lead that you were down there at the Super Bowl speaking to the NFL alums. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool that that the guys were into that, and kudos to them. Was that through the alumni union or who set that up?
Well, so it's a part of the NFL, which is that as these men transition out of their career as players, that they do get healthcare. It's kind of an interesting thing, Chuck. They do get healthcare, but only for 5 years,
Mm,
and a ton of them suffer with long-term um, results from the injuries that they
yeah.
sustained during their career. And also, they're not these they're great athletes, but they're not necessarily being taught how to eat and live in a way that's going to promote their longevity,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so this has become an increasing area of concern. And among the alumni themselves, a lot of this is motivated. I met several players, actually several who were on the Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens from the early 2000s. Um, I met several players where their personal motivation is like, hey, I'm 50 and I want to see 90.
Yeah.
And that's not happening with most NFL players, despite the money that they have. How can we make this better? And so it's kind of it is an organization within the NFL, but really it's motivated by the players who want to make sure that like as people transition out of their career, that they can protect themselves and age in a way that's productive. So, and you have to keep in mind too, not to get too deep into the NFL, but it is Super Bowl week still, so I guess we are allowed to on some
We're
level.
cleared. We're cleared.
Yeah. Well, you have to keep in mind that a roster is made up of 53 players. And the vast majority of those players, they're in the league for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
They basically just get cycled through. They come in, they're given a shot. If the shot doesn't produce something for the team just moves on because they'd rather take a shot with someone else. So, and so these people, they're not rich. They're not rich. They're working full-time jobs and they're trying to figure out as NFL alumni, how can I be healthy as I age? So, and
Yeah.
I commend that.
Yeah, I think that that's great. I saw you were down there with Dr. Dawn Musalem, who is just, I mean, a firecracker, just an extraordinary. If you haven't heard my interview with Dr. M, I mean, I highly recommend it. This is the woman who became the first person in history to run a complete marathon on the first anniversary of receiving a heart transplant. I mean, you want to talk about an extraordinary human being. Dawn Musalem definitely is close to the top of that list, if not at the top.
She is a complete and total inspiration.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you've had her on the show. And you know what? It's time for her to come back because
I
she's
think
just
so.
so good. So she's a Mayo Clinic lifestyle medicine doctor. She runs programs for Mayo Clinic employees. She also is an integrative oncologist. She's a breast cancer survivor. She's got an insane story. I don't want to be the one to share it. She deserves to be the one to share it. And it sounds like she did on some level, but you could like literally hear this story for an hour. It's wild.
Yeah.
And it's all about perseverance in her own life with health and finding ultimately on some level one of the things that was helpful for her was finding the power of a whole food plant-based diet, and that's what she advocates for.
Absolutely. The woman, just one of my favorite interviews ever. Just personifies, John Cena's motto, never give up. I mean, just what she's been through and always gone through it with a smile on her face is just,
Yeah,
anyway, let's get back on track, open up the doctor's mailbag, take some
let's
questions
do it.
from the roomies.
Get them in here. Get them in
Yeah,
here.
yeah, roomies, come on in. Let's start with Jennifer, who's wondering what drinks you might recommend that can help soothe heartburn. What would you recommend?
Um, Drinks that soothe heartburn. Well, I mean, in the moment when you're feeling um, heartburn, then you could potentially benefit from sort of more creamy type drinks, so like a plant-based milk. Like if I were to choose one, it would be soy milk, an organic soy milk. That can help to just kind of cool things off. It's not necessarily fixing the problem. But what it is neutralizing the acid. And neutralizing that acid can help you to at least feel better in that moment, take away your symptoms, which is a good thing. I think that's a good thing. So
There's been kind of passed down through the generations in the Carroll and Wright households. That's my wife's last name. That drinking dairy when you're having a spell of heartburn, that can help. I know that that's a acid neutralizer, but I mean, can dairy in the long run actually make it worse?
gosh, that's an interesting question. So, I would not advocate for a person's approach to this problem to be long-term use of drinking milk. So, and to be completely frank and honest, that includes drinking soy milk. Like I'm saying, like in the acute setting, when you do need relief, that can help. The worst thing is ginger ale. Ginger ale would be the worst. Um, so, or things that are very acidic. But yeah, Chuck, with that, I just don't think that that to me is something that I would ever really consider long term. I don't see where the value from that really exists. We need to get back to addressing the root of the issue, and dairy or even soy milk really doesn't help us to accomplish that.
Interesting question from Emily. She's wondering, why does heartburn tend to be worse at night than earlier in the day?
Yeah. So there's a few things here. One, it's positional. So as I sit here and I talk to you, gravity is on my side. So I'm trying to prevent things from going up, and gravity is pulling them down. That's a beautiful thing. But the problem is that when I lay down prone, then no longer do I have gravity pulling things down for me. If anything, something that splashes up in my chest may just sit there, right? So because gravity's not pulling it down anymore. So that's part of the issue, is that reflux that's occurring at night will potentially just sit there in the esophagus and cause injury, and then you feel it. Second, I think that there's an increased awareness to symptoms at night, because we're less distracted, right? It's like you're trying to sleep and here's this thing and you feel that, and there's
Mm.
no avoiding that. And the third thing is actually inflammation increases at night. So many people don't realize that, but actually our immune system gets activated in a good way, in a cleansing way, um, to get organized at night. But this is also the reason that inflammatory things, which could include reflux, become more prevalent and worse at night. So, like people have noticed, you get a runny nose, it tends to get worse at night. That post-nasal drip that's giving you that cough, it tends to get worse at night. Why would this be? Well, again, what I'm saying to you is that activation increases at night.
Did not know that. That
Yeah.
is an interesting fact, man. We're always learning on this show. That's what I'm talking about when I say that we're raising our health IQs here on the exam room. We were just talking about lifestyle med with Dr. M. Stephanie is wondering, speaking of lifestyle, whether a stressful lifestyle can increase a person's risk of having heartburn.
So stress in general, like a chronic stressful lifestyle, results in activation of the sympathetic nervous system. And when the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, there's things that happen that in theory would be good if we needed to protect ourselves, right? So like if in theory I was being attacked and I activated my sympathetic nervous system, it gets my heart pumping, it gets sugar to my muscles, and it basically puts me in a position where I can run, I can jump, I can do athletic things that I need to do to protect myself. But the consequence is you sacrifice the gut. This is the issue. So the sympathetic nervous system, when we are dominantly driven by the sympathetic nervous system, which I would add that this is not just people with stress. This is like our culture, time spent online, and the news cycle that's triggering us, right? So these things, when it makes you sympathetic dominant, it actually causes harm to the gut, and it affects gut motility. And acid reflux is a disorder of gut motility. So this is the mechanism by which stress makes it worse. The flip side of this, Chuck, is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest. It's more of a mode of relaxation. There's a number of things that can flip us from the sympathetic nervous system and flip us over to the opposite side, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. Examples of this are like, for example, breathing. So doing breathing exercises, doing meditation, dancing, connecting with friends. These are all things. I'm glad you got a chuckle out of that, Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
These are all things that activate our parasympathetic nervous system, and parasympathetic is a beautiful, wonderful thing for your gut microbes, and for gut motility. There's research to indicate that just by doing breathing exercises, we can improve constipation, which is a different motility issue at the opposite end of the intestines. And in the same regard, my expectation would be that this is also beneficial for the front part of the intestines and acid reflux. So what we want to activate the parasympathetic.
All right, Lauren, we were talking about just a while ago, why is heartburn worse at night? Well, she's wondering, would you counsel your patients to sleep in an upright position if they're having heartburn symptoms?
When possible, I would, but just to be aware, this is actually a lot harder for people to do than you may realize. The vast majority of people, when they hear, okay, sleep at an angle, what they're going to do is they're going to go and grab a whole bunch of pillows and put it on, like, sort of prop their shoulders up. You might put it under your shoulders. The problem is, like, your shoulders are propped up a little bit. Your neck is propped a little bit in a weird position that might actually give you a crick in the neck, but you're not actually propping up the chest. And in order to, like, truly get this to work, your chest needs to be above your stomach. And so they have these wedges that you can get, and the wedge you actually put underneath the mattress, and that allows you to get into a position. But it's easier said than done, because the vast majority of people, what they'll do is they'll, like, just slide down to the bottom of the wedge so that only their head is on the wedge, and then it's like you're not actually propped up at all.
Yeah.
So when possible, I think it's a great thing. There's not really a downside there, but my point is that it's not that easy to do.
All right, let's get into some specific foods here. Pretty interesting. You mentioned that ginger ale was pretty much a no-no here, but what about actual ginger? Because I've heard that that's good for nausea, but is ginger also helpful for heartburn?
Okay, so and we started to do this when we were talking about stomach acid and the medications, the proton pump inhibitors. Let's separate out acid, which triggers the symptom but is not the root cause of the problem, and separate that out from motility. All right, motility is the root of the issue, and that's what we want to address. Well, guess what accelerates emptying of your stomach? Ginger. This is the reason why ginger is good for nausea. This is why ginger is good during pregnancy. And this is why ginger can also be of benefit and helpful within the context of acid reflux. So I actually think that ginger can be good if it were taken in a supplement form, which allows you to get larger amounts of ginger, because ginger is quite spicy. And it's that spiciness, like such as with ginger ale, that's going to trigger your symptoms. It's not going to feel good. You're going to feel that. It doesn't mean that ginger is inherently the root cause of the problem. Actually, it's just that it's coming into contact with a damaged surface. But instead, if we could get that down into your stomach and we can get things moving in terms of your stomach, get your stomach emptying and propelling things forward, that's actually what we want.
Let me ask you this. How difficult of a process is it to actually drill down and be able to accurately diagnose what the root cause is of this recurring heartburn?
Well, I mean, again, measuring motility is quite a challenge, because your esophagus and stomach and small intestine, these are the relevant parts. They're constantly moving throughout the day. But there are things that we look at, Chuck, that we've been looking at for about 20 years. In fact, my mentors in Chicago at Northwestern are some of the most famous esophagologists in the entire world and have thoroughly studied this topic. So we used to think that there was this thing that was happening. It's called transient lower esophageal sphincter relaxation. We used to think, like, this is the root cause of acid reflux. And basically, at the bottom of the esophagus is the tube that connects down to your stomach. So where the stomach and the esophagus come into contact with each other, there's a sphincter muscle. And that sphincter muscle, it is like a flap. It can open and close, right? And if it's closed, then in theory, things that are in the stomach should not go backwards. They should not go retrograde because the valve is closed. And so, but what we noticed is that people were having these spontaneous openings where for no reason at all that we could explain, it would just open up. And when it opens up, now it's like very easy for things to splash up in there. And so for a period of time, and this is like roughly 15 years ago, um, this is what we thought was the driving force. But over the course of time, what we've discovered is like we're kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, and we're seeing that the stomach is not emptying. We're seeing that the esophagus is not moving things through the way that it should. And you see that all these different pieces are falling into place, and they all point to a common issue, which is a motility problem. But testing that is not so easy, Chuck. So there's not just like this one thing. Typically, acid reflux tests that are done are not done to answer the question, do you have a motility disorder? They're done to say, how much reflux do you have? And that helps to define like the intensity of how much is happening. But to me, as a gastroenterologist, based upon everything that I know, it's not really a question like, do you have a motility disorder? If you are diagnosed with a chronic acid reflux problem, you have a motility disorder. We already know that. That's the root cause.
Gotcha. What would you recommend be like the first step for a person if they're trying to really figure out, well, is it lifestyle? Is it diet? Is it a specific food or two in the diet? Because I know like if a person were to do the elimination diet, that is a long and arduous process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's most likely not a specific food, but again, what we come back to is that there are these foods that aren't necessarily the root cause of the problem that will trigger your symptoms. And you will know it immediately,
Yeah.
right? You drink a glass of orange juice and you have a reflux problem, you will know it immediately. And you'll have no doubt. And does that result in a person temporarily reducing those particular foods that trigger their symptoms? Yes, that's understandable, and that's what they should do. But what we shouldn't do is sit back and not address the root of the problem. We should get after the root of the problem. So to me, Chuck, the question was like, what do you do? Is this a lifestyle thing?
Yep.
Yeah, it is for everyone on some level. We should pull the levers that we have the opportunity to pull. And the problem is that no one has been taught this. No one has been told, hey, here are the things that you do to address diet, lifestyle, circadian rhythm, sleep, exercise, things that can help to get your motility into proper alignment. And so, but we all have the opportunity to do that. Is it a universal code where every single person is doing the same thing? No, you have to find what is most applicable to you. So you might be a person like, in theory, the listeners of the exam room might be 100% whole food, plant-based diet, no oil. Okay, cool. There's other things that we can work on, right? We can work on sleep. We can work on morning light exposure and exercise. These are other opportunities. So, but yes, diet and lifestyle absolutely should be a part of the package. What's number one for me? Number one for me, where I start is fiber. No surprise. But it's not
fiber fueled.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, of course, I'm Mr. Fiber Fuels. But Chuck, the reason why I can't get away from this, even if I wanted to, is that the way in which we address problems should be targeted to the greatest opportunities for improvement, right? Don't take the person who's already doing whole food plant-based and then say, well, by being whole food plant-based, no oil, that this is going to fix all your problems. That to me is not the way that we go about this. I would much rather say, look, 95% of Americans are deficient in fiber. There's clear-cut data. There's clear-cut data both with fiber supplements and also with dietary patterns that are high in fiber that we can improve acid reflux. So that's where we need to start, is acknowledging that the vast majority of people, this is their greatest opportunity to address that issue.
Amen to that, brother, man. Let me ask you this, and then I want to shift gears and talk about flying south on March 7th, man. We got that big party down there. But let me ask you this. Chronic reflux, GERD, it doesn't pop up overnight, and it builds up to me over time. It's just kind of like a lifetime of bad habits may have put you in this position. And because it didn't pop up overnight, odds are it's not going to go away overnight. How long does it take, in your opinion, for the typical case of recurring reflux to dissipate?
Imagine for a moment, Chuck, that you were riding your bike and you fell off and you skinned your elbow, right? It's a sensitive area. The nerves are exposed. You don't like running hot water over it because it hurts. What you're asking me is, when will it stop hurting? And the answer to that question is that it's going to take time for that elbow wound to heal. And it depends on the depth and the intensity of the wound. So if you have a minor elbow injury, by tomorrow, you might be better. But if you have a severe elbow injury, it's going to probably take you a couple weeks. And so to me, it's about the intensity of the injury that's occurred and allowing that an opportunity to heal. You have to take away the causative factor to allow the body to heal. There is a role for medicine. I'm not of the belief that we should create stubborn rules where we say no medicine, never, not at all. Instead, I'm of the belief that medicine is kind of like a pair of crutches. You put the medicine on board while you need them, while your body is healing and getting stronger. And then you look for an opportunity to take them away, take the medicine away. But the only way that that's going to work is that the body truly heals, and then you take away the problem. And that's where diet and lifestyle come in. Diet and lifestyle is how you address the root of the issue. It takes longer. Medication can work very quickly. It could literally, within the first day of taking it, the first time you take it, you will notice a difference. But if you really want to get to the root of this issue, you combine both, or you just do diet and lifestyle until it's gone.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of where we get tripped up, whether it's heartburn or anything else, is we get the medication and we keep doing the exact same thing that we have been
Sure.
doing without making changes. And so, of course, nothing's going to change once you take the medicine away. You're going to go
And
right back to feeling that way.
and Chuck, actually, this is I brought this up when I was with the NFL alumni last week. There's a question about GLP-1s. That's a hot topic.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's just touch on this real quick. GLP-1 is a gut hormone, and one of the things that it does to make you feel full is it stops your stomach from emptying. In theory, a person who takes a GLP-1 drug will suffer with nausea or could suffer worsening of their reflux symptoms. All right. Now, one of the issues that I see with the GLP-1s, Chuck, is, and this is me, I'm not anti. I just believe in being smart as a consumer and not buying into marketing hype that's trying to make money. Um, One of the issues that exists with the GLP-1s that we need to be conscious of is that you're committing to taking these drugs long term. So, like the minute you stop using the drug, your issues will come back immediately. The data are very clear. You lose weight, it stays off as long as you stay on the drug. The minute you remove the drug, the weight comes all the way back. All the issues come all the way back. So, well, here's the problem. Like, we don't know. We don't know what happens when a person uses these drugs for 10 years. And if you're my age, you could potentially be using these drugs for 50 years, right? I'm in my mid 40s. And if you're Chuck's age, you could be using them for 60 years because he's going to live to like 110.
I hope so, man. I definitely hope so. I want to be a limber 110. But that's
Yeah.
yeah, man. And look, to be perfectly honest with you, I think part of that also is what concerns me about my decision now 15 years ago, over 15 years ago, to have weight loss surgery. Is like, the longest term studies that I've seen now are like 2 or 3 decades. Well, I'm trying to live past that. What happens? I don't know. Do I regret the decision? No, because it brought me here today. But there's a lot of unknown. And I do
Yes.
know that once I applied the lifestyle and the diet changes post bariatric surgery, that's when I saw my biggest success. So
Right.
I'd like to say that I'm giving myself the best shot, but there's still a ton of unknown there?
Well, we have a lot more data with that. We have a lot more long-term data with that, and also the physiology of it. You're creating a physical restriction with the surgery,
Yeah.
whereas with this, you're creating a physiologic restriction, creating an unnatural physiology, something that like humans have never had before. You've never had this level of GLP-1 coursing through your blood continuously in the history of humanity. And I think that like my point with this, Chuck, is when I say this, like we don't know, we just don't know, is actually because we've been talking about heartburn and reflux, and we're talking about these drugs like Nexium and Protonix and Prilosec. Again, like for a very long time in my field of gastroenterology, we thought there's just no downside Why would you? What? There's no downside. Like, people are using these drugs every single day for years on end, and it's hard to say that there's any real problem with that. And now, as I sit here today, this is literally on my slide deck of why people get a damaged gut microbiome and then suffer with other consequences that come from a damaged gut microbiome. So this is my point with the GLP-1s, is that we just don't know what's going to happen, and that any sort of drug that's quite unnatural, there always is something that emerges given enough time. So I just would exercise caution. The other thing to keep in mind, Chuck, is that for people that have a body mass index greater than 35, which is who is being studied in the phase 3 clinical trials of these drugs, they have a lot to gain. You lived this way,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's short term in terms of many aspects of your life, your mobility, pressure on your joints, joint comfort, how you feel, your mood. Like, there's many different benefits that experience short term. It's also long term in terms of preventing cancer, preventing cardiovascular disease, and other conditions that are associated with obesity. Those people have a lot to gain by losing the weight one way or another, whether it's GLP-1 or weight loss surgery. It's very different than a person who has a body mass index of 26 and wants to look good in a swimsuit. It's just
Yeah.
very different.
All right, man. Well, I mean, I wish that we had more time. I feel like there's so much more ground that we could cover here, but let's go ahead and do our best to extinguish those flames. If somebody wants to head over to your website, theplantfedgut.com, I know that you have a lot of courses up there, a lot of great information. Can they find some more stuff there?
Oh yeah, actually, I have the perfect course for these people. So it's called Head to Head with Heartburn, and it is one of my 2 best-selling courses. And the reason why is because people get real benefit from it. Because basically, from my perspective, I am filling in the gaps of what I think you need to know so that you can be an empowered patient. So when you go to your doctor, they're going to make the diagnosis. They're going to create a medical plan, which includes prescription medication probably. But what they're not going to do is really dig into the details of, here are the lifestyle elements that you can add that can potentially address the root of the issue. So that's where this course comes in. And to me, it's about what you can add in to really make a difference, and ultimately create a strategy that allows you to reduce and potentially eliminate medication. I've had a bazillion people who have fully thrown away the medications, but there also are people that are reducing it substantially, or or changing to a less powerful medication. And that to me is a huge win as well.
Cool. And we've got a link to that in the show notes down below, plantfedgut.com. Also, my yoga instructor, Fran, she asked me to say thank you. She started taking DMN, and she was having a lot of heartburn issues. She was really excited that we were going to be talking about this today. And so, yeah, I mean, I go and I take her courses all the time at this place called Zentral Station. And it's fantastic. But she came to me and she was just talking about how this heartburn was just really killing her. And she's gotten a lot of relief from DMN. She's making a lot of the changes you and I have talked about here today. So she just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Will.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you, Fran. Please pass this along to her. I'm honored by this. I mean, this is, to me, this is why the product exists. And for people that have chronic acid reflux, there's clear-cut data that fiber supplements can contribute to improvement of that reflux. And it's a fascinating thing, because if you asked me 10 years ago why that would be, I would be like, who knows? That's crazy. But now I think it's increasingly clear that there's an esophageal microbiome, and that you can manipulate the esophageal microbiome through fiber supplements that are readily available to those microbes when they go in. And so that's really cool, and I'm honored by that.
All right, man. Last bit of business today. Miami, March 7th. Would you believe that the tickets to the podcast sold out in the pre-sale? Couldn't even have a single ticket left over for the general public, man. We did a pre-sale and boom, those things got scooped up so fast. But the good news is, even if you can't join us for the podcast, we're still going to be at Dr. Barnard's Bon Voyage Bash that night too. So you can still come and hang with us in South Florida. And let's be honest, I've got like 9 inches of snow on the ground right now outside my window. All right. We just had a snowstorm here overnight in the Washington, D.C. area. I cannot wait for some warm Miami weather, man. Let's party, man.
Look, let's just keeping it real. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. This is a great place. We have wonderful weather, but it's February. It's been dark. It's been cold. Once in a while, we get a decent day, but I'm ready to sweat. I'm ready to sweat. I'm ready to feel the intensity of the sun again. And what's the perfect place to do it? It's Miami. And there's not a better group of people to do it with. And there's not a better person for me to be doing it with than you, Chuck. You're the best, man.
You're my guy. You're my guy. And we'll get that intro locked. We're going to have some great times down there at the podcast and at the party, and we'll just celebrate the warm weather. It's going to be amazing. So you can go and secure your tickets to the bash right now at pcrm.org/events. Dr. B, the Gut Health MD, the next show we do will be down in Miami. So, man, I can't wait. This is going to be one heck of a fiesta, sir.
Amazing, Chuck. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today.
Appreciate you, Dr. B. And I also want to say thank you to the crew behind the scenes for making the magic happen, and for you exam roomies for raising your health IQ with us. Greatly appreciate you guys, as always. And on behalf of everybody here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again very soon. But until then, keep it plant-based.